Hello friends, and welcome to another episode. In this video, we invite you to join us for a trip down the strange rabbit hole that some refer to as the Bennington Triangle. The area known as the Bennington Triangle, which surrounds Glastonbury Mountain in the New England state of Vermont, has a long, strange history of bizarre occurrences. This includes UFO sightings, Bigfoot encounters, eerie lights and sounds, and the triangle also happens to be the location of several unsolved disappearances during the 1940s and 1950s. If that isn't odd enough, according to Native American lore, the area is heavily cursed. The Native American tribes of New England have always known something was off with the area and tend to steer clear of it at all costs. One particularly chilling legend from the Algonquin tribe cautions of the existence of what are described as evil rocks in the mountains, which have the ability to spring open and devour those unfortunate enough to step upon them. Now, this is rather interesting, considering how people have vanished without a trace from within the triangle. New England author Joseph A. Citro is the person considered to have coined the term Bennington Triangle in 1992, while doing a radio broadcast about paranormal and other unusual activity in the area. According to Citro's findings, he states that the area has similar characteristics with the equally strange Bridgewater Triangle in the bordering state of Massachusetts, which has been written about extensively by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman. The Bennington Triangle is centered around the heavily wooded forest of Glastonbury Mountain and also includes the small towns of Bennington, Woodford, and Shaftesbury, and also the abandoned or ghost towns of Somerset and Glastonbury. Over the last 200 years, there have been many encounters with and sightings of a Bigfoot-like cryptid in the area surrounding Glastonbury Mountain. The locals, as well as paranormal and cryptozoological investigators, refer to this unknown creature as the Bennington Monster. The earliest recorded sightings of the beast occurred in the early 1800s, when a stagecoach loaded with passengers was forced to stop its journey due to a heavily washed-out section of the stage road. The driver of the stagecoach observed that there were very large footprints in the mud, which were way too large to belong to any human. While the perplexed driver was pondering these prints, the stagecoach was suddenly attacked by a large creature that was strong enough to flip the stagecoach over onto its side. The terrified passengers stated that they observed a frightening pair of large eyes peering into the overturned coach at them before whatever the creature was screamed and then ran off to disappear in the surrounding woods. The passengers would later describe the monster as a large, hairy, black creature well over 6 feet in height. The area has long been rife with tales of people suddenly going missing within the area of the triangle. One of the oddest disappearances was that of a man named Carol Herrick in 1943. Herrick disappeared while on a hunting trip just a few miles northeast of the abandoned town of Glastonbury. Although his body was found 3 days later, it was observed to be surrounded by dozens of footprints, too large for a normal person. It was also determined that Carol appeared to have been squeezed to death. Then, beginning in 1945 and continuing for the next 5 years, people began to go mysteriously missing from the area with an alarming regularity. A man named Mitty Rivers, a 74-year-old hunting guide very familiar with the area, went missing on November 12, 1945. Rivers, who had led many hunting parties in the area over decades, was taking a group of 4 hunters to the oddly named Hell Hollow area, which is located within the southwest forest of Glastonbury. While leading the hunting party back to camp, he somehow got ahead of the other 4 and, for reasons unknown, never returned to the campsite. At first, the other hunters were not overly concerned, as they knew Mitty to be an expert woodsman and knowledgeable guide. When Rivers still had failed to return the next day, The authorities were contacted and an extensive search was held, comprising as many as 300 worried locals, as well as a number of U.S. Army soldiers who had been dispatched from nearby Fort Devens in Massachusetts. They searched through the deep woods for 8 straight days, but the only possible evidence found was an ammo cartridge for the same type rifle that Rivers was known to be carrying. The cartridge was found in a shallow stream, and there was no evidence of any foul play or animal attack nearby. Although they had no luck with the extensive search effort, many of Mitty's friends and those local to the area were sure with the man's knowledge of the woods and survival skills he would eventually return. However, this never came to be, and no trace of the missing guide has ever been found. The area from which Rivers vanished is near Long Trail Road and Vermont State Route 9. The very next year, on Sunday, December 1st, 1946, an 18-year-old college student named Paula Weldon went missing while hiking in the same area around Long Trail Road. Easily remembered because she was wearing a bright red jacket, several people recalled seeing her that day, including a shop clerk in Bennington who had provided her with directions, and also a couple of elderly hikers who had been approximately 300 feet behind her on the trail for part of their hike. The alarm was sounded when the college sophomore didn't show up the next morning for her classes at Bennington College. An extensive search was launched by local authorities and included more than 1,000 volunteer searchers. There were also searches conducted from the air, and with the assistance of the FBI, and a $5,000 reward was offered. When interviewed, the elderly couple who had observed Paula hiking just ahead of them on the trail stated that after they watched her turn a corner on the trail, she seemed to have just vanished. Despite the extensive searches and the offer of the $5,000 reward, no trace of Paula Weldon has ever been found, and her fate remains unknown. Exactly 3 years to the day of the disappearance of Paula Weldon, a man named James Tedford suddenly vanished from a bus on December 1st, 1949. A military veteran and resident of the local Bennington Soldiers' Home, Tedford was returning via bus from St. Albans, where he'd been visiting relatives when he vanished. Based on eyewitness accounts, Tedford and 13 other passengers were on the bus at the previous stop before the bus had arrived in Bennington. But when the bus pulled into the station, he had somehow disappeared. His bags were still in the luggage rack, and a bus schedule was found lying open on his now empty seat. The other passengers stated that they didn't see Tedford get off the bus at any of the previous stops, and he wasn't on the bus when it pulled into Bennington. Authorities investigated the disappearance and were convinced that no one had seen anything, and there were no suspicious incidents which had occurred during the bus trip. One strange and interesting fact, it should be noted that Tedford's wife, Pearl, had also vanished under mysterious circumstances a couple of years prior. Now, there aren't many details about his early life, but in 1940, Tedford was listed as a resident in Franklin, Vermont, with his wife, Pearl, who was much younger, her age being 28 while he was 56. The strangeness began following Tedford's return to Vermont after the end of his second round of military service near the end of World War II. Upon his return, he found that Pearl had vanished, no trace of her to be found, and the house the couple had rented in Franklin, Vermont, was found to have been left abandoned. Tedford's family claimed no knowledge as to the whereabouts of the missing wife, and stated the last time they had seen her was as she was on her way to the Amoco gas station in Franklin. There was speculation among the locals that, rather than having met with foul play, she had understandably grown tired of waiting for her much older husband to return from war and had simply taken off. Whatever the cause, she was never to be seen or heard from again. Tedford was crushed and moved into the local home for soldiers, where he still lived when he vanished. The next year, On October 12, 1950, an 8-year-old boy named Paul Jepson was the next in the area to go missing. Jepson was last seen in the cab of his mother's pickup truck in Bennington, where she had left him to play while she briefly tended to her pigs. When the mother returned, she found that the boy was gone. She quickly looked for him in the nearby immediate area with no luck, after which she reported him missing, and soon hundreds of volunteers had assembled to help search for the missing boy. Tracking dogs were brought in to aid in the search for the missing boy. The dogs were able to pick up his scent and followed it towards Glastonbury Mountain. However, when the scent was lost at a nearby crossroads, it was thought that perhaps the boy had either been abducted by a stranger or had otherwise accepted a ride in a passing automobile. Paul's father stated that, oddly enough, the boy had talked about visiting the mountain almost non-stop for the last week or so. The area around Glastonbury Mountain was searched extensively for the next several days, but sadly no trace of Paul has ever been found. Then, 16 days after Paul Jepson's mysterious disappearance, a woman named Frida Langer disappeared on October 28, 1950. Frida was camping with several other family members in the forest near Glastonbury Mountain. Langer, then aged 53, along with her cousin, Herbert Elsner, had ventured away from the family's woodland campsite to go on a hike near the Somerset Reservoir. They had managed to hike just a few hundred yards from their campsite when Frida lost her footing and fell into a mountain stream, completely soaking her shoes and clothing. Due to the chilly fall temperature in the mountains, Frida told her cousin to wait while she ran back to their campsite to change into some dry clothes. Her cousin stated that he waited for what seemed like a sufficient amount of time, and when Frida still hadn't returned, he decided to go back to the camp to see if she was okay. However, upon his return, he was shocked to learn that Frida hadn't returned to the campsite at all. She had instead apparently vanished in broad daylight in the distance of a few hundred yards. Frida was reported missing, and over the next several weeks, search parties, with as many as 400 people, including concerned volunteers, law enforcement, firefighters, and military, as well as some aircraft, searched for her and came up empty-handed. Sadly, the search was eventually abandoned. 7 months later, however, on May 12, 1951, Frida's body was discovered near Somerset Reservoir, strangely enough, in an area that had been extensively searched many times previously. The advanced decomposition of her remains meant that no cause of death could be determined, and her case is still unsolved. And then, just as strangely and suddenly as they had begun, the string of disappearances stopped. Frida Langer was the last person to vanish mysteriously during this time frame, and the only missing persons whose remains were found. Other than the geographic locations and time frame, no other connection has been discovered that tie these cases to one another, although some have speculated that a serial killer may be responsible for these strange disappearances. Some blame the Native American curse, or simply claim that the paranormal is to blame, as there appears to be an active portal here into the unexplained. There's also the theory that the area is very unstable due to the unusually chaotic and confusing wind and weather patterns on the mountain, which can cause people to easily become disoriented and then lost as a result. Regardless of what is to be believed, the Bennington Triangle is known to be home to strange and mysterious paranormal phenomena. As well as the aforementioned Bigfoot encounters and the string of mysterious disappearances, there are many reports of strange floating orbs of light, sightings of other bizarre forest creatures, and even the occasional UFO sighting. Well, there you have it, a small glimpse into the unknown, courtesy of the enigma known as the Bennington Triangle. I hope you've enjoyed these stories, and if there are other strange areas you'd like for us to cover, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below. And don't forget to please like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time. Tell your animals Steve says hi.